Thank you, Mr. President, and indeed thank you to the speakers for their contributions. I think one issue perhaps you haven't touched on enough is the motivation of young people, and particularly motivation of young people in situations where the employment market does not look good, because I think part of it is about keeping up that motivation. And if I can use an example from my own hometown, which is a town north of Bristol called Gloucester, has the best rugby club in Europe. And
I don't think so.
And recently, a friend of mine who runs a large company there sought to have about 30 people working from about 5 o'clock in the morning. It was in the building industry. Gloucester has, unfortunately, quite a high level of youth unemployment. And it employed 30 people, and about 50 people turned up. Of those 50 people, only 2 were English and 48 were from Eastern Europe. We have very little unemployment in the Eastern European population of Gloucester. We traditionally have had quite a high one because from the post-war we had quite a lot of Poles coming for local coal mines. But it's interesting that the lack of motivation of young people going out to looking for a job that was not particularly highly skilled. And I think there could be a lot, if you, I think, go to my own member state and you can see, we hear of areas where there is high youth unemployment, but you will see, again, Eastern European or other immigrant population turning up for the jobs. So I think that is one of the issues that we need to look at. And the other point I was going to make was touched on about teaching. I'm actually slightly intrigued. I wasn't sure whether Mr. Mires was suggesting structural funds should be used in secondary and primary education. I would think a number of member states, not least my own, would be very hesitant in that area. But one of the problems I face, and I'm chairman of governors of a school, is I constantly go to farewell parties for teachers. Retirement parties for teachers. I very rarely go to retirement parties for teachers who are over about 60, 61, because the teaching profession, and you should not think that Greece has a problem with its pensions alone, has problems with its pensions for public pensions. It's also a problem in my member state, is because they're generous. Of course, they take early retirement. Now, I'm 71, and I'm quite capable, I hasten to add, of working. And I think most of us, people in the country who are 71, are quite capable of working. That's why I appreciated Mr. Mann. But it is an example here of a disincentive and losing from a very vital area for helping young people that our teachers do retire early.
Okay, so you raise interesting issues there. Some of them, but not all of them, on motivations to leave early or not to engage, are the work welfare space, which I think is an interesting one. Mr. Mires can answer for himself. In my own note, I understood, insofar as it was a reference to potential use of structural funds, it was in respect of open educational resources and internet and that kind of connectivity, but perhaps it's different. Let me go to Manuel Porto, please.
Thank you very much. And happily I missed part of the session, but I follow what was said, I think. Well, I'm strongly worried about education, so the other people. So, in fact, I teach since 47 years, and before I was a student. Even when I was in this parliament, I did fly on Friday, and I teach on Friday and Saturday. So it is my area. I don't know much more to do, and I was elected after I left, President of the National Council of Education. But because I'm worried with the future, with the young generation like yours, because I have 4 children, besides the other people, of course, and 12 grandchildren, And my duty is what will be the future of my grandchildren. Well, 3 of them are now in the trade of China. But I don't, it is the future for our children to go to China or to any other country. And I would like to put, so I think that somebody else would like to put in that sense, and not so much in education. It is important to have the best education, so I can say this what I think really. But I'm more worried about the market. It is the market which creates conditions for education. And the question I have to you, for you, is the following. When I look to Europe, in the line of what the question I put yesterday in the dinner, I was just hearing tomorrow in Euronews the lowest rates of unemployment. They are in Germany and in Holland, the most decentralized countries. Because I see also in my country, my region is the central region of Portugal, the lowest level of unemployment is in an equilibrated region like mine, where we have the big centers, the big capitals like Lisbon and so on, there are more difficulties. There are the richest people, by far, the richest companies, government, but it is easier to have equilibrium in a region like mine with small cities of 150,000 people. It is the case of Germany, with the exception of Berlin, of course, the case of Holland, of Switzerland. So they have the lowest rates. And my question is whether it is not a question to open the opportunities to have good physical planning and a good equilibrium in the country. So it is another issue, but I think I should raise it here. Unhappy, my point is put in a bad way by Spain, because you are decentralized, but you have lots of unemployment. Those I would like to know your opinion, if you are going to take forward your opinion about Spain, because my data, my statistics would be okay if it was not the case. It was the case of Greece. We followed the model of Greece, having 4.5 million people in Athens. In Lisbon it will be perhaps the same. So it is not a good example. I prefer to follow the example of Germany, of Switzerland, and of Holland. I think it is better for our reasons. But I think I would like to have a good example of Spain with the strong decentralization and the lower unemployment for all reasons, mainly because it is our main market. We export more than 25% of our export are to Spain, and most of the trees come from Spain. So I hope you solve your problem very, very quickly. And so this is addressed to Marta as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuel. Juan Colom, please.
Sí, gracias.
Thank you. We've been talking about youth all the time as if it's one single block. There's no difference between male and female youth. We haven't heard anything about that. I work in university and I have many more female students than male. I have a female head of department. There are a lot more female teachers than male. So I wonder whether university is a kind of refuge for some of those people who aren't unemployed. I would just like to hear a few comments between the difference between male and female unemployment. That's the first comment. The second is about worker mobility. Spain is traditionally a country of emigration. We have a lot more Spanish people abroad than we do foreigners in Spain. We heard about the 80,000 German workers who came just after accession to work in Spain. Okay, we have those kind of figures, but recently, if you look at emigration, there are some important points. In Catalonia, we had for 2 days a mission from Quebec offering us 3,000 jobs in Quebec. They weren't asking for low-skilled jobs. They were asking for doctors, economists, all with higher education qualifications. Some of my assistants from here have gone to Shanghai. I had assistants who went to Shanghai 15 years ago and haven't come back. Recently, Spanish emigration has been, okay, some towards Germany, but mainly to Chile, Brazil, Angola. a while ago, Austria and the UK were asking us for doctors and nurses as well. So there's been a change in quality in immigration. Emigrants now are highly qualified, and they've received their qualifications at the cost of Spanish taxpayers. And now it's the Spanish taxpayers who are suffering the costs, who are suffering from the cuts in education and social security, which are being imposed by the European Union. We received a lot of immigrants recently, particularly Africans in Catalonia and from Latin America throughout Spain. Many of them are highly qualified, but they don't carry out their profession that they've been trained for. They work at very low-level jobs. People who've been qualified at the University of Dakar or wherever, but they don't work as lawyers and nurses. They work as manual labourers. So there's the qualitative aspect of immigration, and we have to remember the future cost for our country. I'm sure the situation is very similar in other countries, and we have to bear that in mind and see what the impact is at European level.
Thank you, Joanne. Karin Juncker, please.
I am very grateful to Juan Colon for having raised the gender issue. Because, yes, that is an important issue. Now, on the basis of my statistics, it's true, in Germany we do have more women starting university, but when it comes to women teachers or professors, that's actually falling in Germany, so I think we need to work on that. And there's another trend that Juan raised, namely that today there's different type of people emigrating to our countries compared to the Spaniards who came to Germany in the 60s. They tended to be very poorly qualified or hardly educated at all, and that was the same for those who came from Italy, Greece and Turkey. Today, what we're seeing are graduates coming to our countries. And yes, it's true, it's the home country who've paid for these people's educations, and the people benefiting from it are Germany. Yes, there's a huge difference, Ursula, between someone who feels forced to leave the country because they don't have any prospects at home, or whether someone's leaving because they want to travel the world. So it's completely different motivation. Obviously, we have to strengthen the pull factor where people want to go abroad, but I think it's terrible to force young people to leave out of desperation. Now, the people coming to Germany from Greece, Spain and Portugal, we have a duty to help them find their feet in our countries and to help them with their prospects. And also maybe the option to allow them to go back home. That would mean that their countries have to introduce possibilities that make it possible for them to go back home. One advantage we have in the EU as EU citizens is that we're not obliged to leave our homes to go abroad and then never come back because we don't have a choice. But we do have the possibility to move around freely in the EU, and that's an amazing opportunity that we have, and I think we've got to continue to foster that. But coming back to the gender issue, now I think there are changes afoot, and if we're already thinking about the need for change, then we also need to change education with this in mind. namely the compartmentalized market, labour market between the genders. We need to break that down. So it's no longer should be the case that young women should be trained for careers that have fewer opportunities than men. It's also the same for men and women in universities. There are huge differences in gender participation in the types of studies that they do, and I agree we've really got to change that. Now, obviously, we also need better basic schooling, but that's another subject. So I think we have to try to combat the gender stereotyping that exists in education and the labour market. We've got to try to break these down and create new opportunities for the people who are still lagging behind. But the problem that I think is of most concern is that the young people who don't think they have any prospects, either because of a failed economic policy or whatever reason, these young people just don't have any confidence in planning their lives. And I think we're losing sight of them. We're talking about education, employment and the labour market. But what does this actually mean for young people who are not able to leave their parental home because they can't afford to move out? What about young people who can't start a family because they simply can't afford it? So what does it actually mean for someone's quality of life, someone's life, if they feel they can't afford to have a child, for example? It means someone can't plan for their future. And I think that's a terrible thing because it limits their possibilities. So I think it's a good thing for us to try to make sure young people do have prospects, and obviously it's linked to a situation facing older people. But obviously if young people have a precarious situation, uncertainty, unemployment, then that gets shifted onto the older generation as well. So it's absolutely essential to have cooperation between the generations. And it's not just about money alone. Thank you.